It's Krishma here from Calm Canine Academy. I'm so excited to be talking today about a topic that's super important. Usually, as a behavior consultant and a dog trainer, I'm on the internet a lot talking about dog training and behavior consulting. And today we are going to discuss that, obviously, but through a slightly different lens. And I'm going to be talking to Marissa Martino, who specializes in supporting the human end of the leash through pet parent coaching. So when we're dealing with these quite challenging dogs sometimes, it can be really trying on us emotionally, spiritually, etc. And Marissa specializes in exactly that part of the sequence that is behavior change. So I'm going to some of the major challenges that we see our community struggling with. And if you're here and you're watching and you have a dog who struggles with separation anxiety, reactivity, etc., put your questions in the chat. Oh, here you are. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome, my love. It's so nice to see you. Everyone say hi to Marissa. Put a little emoji or something down there to say hello. And like I was saying, if you have any questions as we go through this, feel free to pop them in the chat box and I'll be feeding them to Marissa. So Marissa, it's so nice to have you here. I was on your podcast a few weeks ago, was it?
Yeah.
And immediately I messaged you afterwards and I was like, okay, you have to come on my live now because I want my folks to meet you because what you're doing is so interesting. So you focus in on the human end of the leash, right? Tell us a little bit more, tell us a little bit more how that happened, because that's unusual. When I met you, I was like, I've never met anyone who does this before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been a behavior consultant in both animal sheltering and in private practice for the past 15 or 16 years. And alongside that, I got very excited about my own personal development journey. And it wasn't until I was seeing a therapist I was having a really rough time in my 20s. I saw a therapist and she asked me a question. She said, if your clients were having, if your dog training clients were having regression with their dog, how would you talk to them and how would you support them? And she asked that because I was experiencing regression in my personal development journey in that moment. Like I had leaned back into old patterns, old ways of being, and I was being really hard on myself. And when she made that parallel for me, I was like, oh, wow, like there's a whole other world here of supporting the human end of the leash. And it's been a long time that I've actually stepped into this role. I've been sort of making up a story why this isn't beneficial. And now I feel really I feel really strongly that it's critical to have while you're caring for a dog in general, but also a dog that has behavior concerns, right? As we know, it's so trying on the human end of the leash. And so being able to supplement your training and behavior modification journey with support is critical in my opinion.
And I think I would be in a similar position where if you'd asked me 5 years ago, do you think that it makes sense for me to just work on this particular part, just the human end, just that emotional development, that development, that there's self-development, like you said, I would have probably been like, no, that doesn't make sense. And now 5 years, I'm like, no, wait, this is the missing piece of the puzzle, because as a behavior consultant, I came in this to work with the dogs, like so many of us. And I've had to build consulting skills and a suite of consulting skills that I can use to help the humans. But it's not my area of expertise, to be perfectly honest. I'm really good at the dogs, I'm really good at the humans, but it's folks like you who have this, your actual calling is this particular piece of the sequence.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me. So frequently I see behavior plans not working, not because the plan is wrong or because there's anything wrong with the dog, but because the humans struggling to implement the plan in a way that we need them to. And that's often to do with exactly what you're talking about. So I'm wondering, the sort of challenges that you most frequently work on with your clients, and then we can I want to talk about, see if that resonates and crosses over with what we know from our community. Because tell me a little bit about the sort of things that people are coming to you saying, I need help with this.
Yeah. So the typical client that I see in my programs and in my private coaching is the the profile of the person is that they care really deeply about supporting their dog. Their dog is their family member. They are what a friend of mine called them pet plus. Like they are not your average pet guardian. They are listening to podcasts, right? They're following Instagram accounts. They are hobbyists. They want to do right by their dogs, and they sort of lose themselves a little bit in the process, or are very hard on themselves in the process. They oscillate between like, giving the training plan all they have and then burning out and sort of freezing and then being hard on themselves that either strategy didn't work. And so um, usually highly sensitive people that are overwhelmed by just world in general, but their dog's emotions, their emotions, and it just kind of gets caught and in the way of their behavioral expression or their relational expression with their dog. And so um, I have a lot of empathy and like deep care for this type of person. I mean, it is very similar to who I am, and it makes sense because in business we attract um, similar, like-minded people. I have a lot of care and empathy for these people because they care so deeply for their dogs. Like they want to do everything for their dogs, and that's just such a beautiful thing. The light in that is that like their dogs receive such amazing support. The shadow in that, because everything has a light and a shadow, the shadow in that is that um, they're really hard on themselves. They're not necessarily prioritizing themselves. And that gets in the way of the behavior modification process. And so I'm here, like, I really, really, really want to be able to support that. And like, sometimes it is, you don't need a coach, right? You're working with a trainer and the trainer asks a really great question, like what seems to be getting in your way of, of executing A, B, and C. And the person's like, ooh, I haven't thought about that. This is getting in my way. And then you both co-create a new strategy and like, cool, it's solved. But I think where a coach can be really helpful is if there's something that comes up time and time again. And it's not just here in your relationship with your dog or here in the training process with your dog. It's kind of how you do a lot of things in life. And so one of my mentors, she says, like, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. I slightly disagree. I think the way you do one thing is the way you do some things, right? And lots of times the way I show up to organizing and managing my dog is the way I show up in other areas. And again, there's light and shadow in that, and I can talk a little bit about my experience, but um, it's it's like it is when you keep hitting this particular ceiling or this particular limiting belief or this particular way of being that is keeping you stuck, and then ultimately keeping your dog stuck. Like that's where I want to like take the time and like go in with my clients and help them alleviate that.
Yes, and that was really clarifying for me as well, because I'm like, where does my role end? And that was really helpful, because it's like, if we're having just a normal roadblock in executing something or in understanding concept or in a shift of perspective, that's something that most behavior consultants, in my opinion, should be able to coach a guardian through. We do it every single day, but what you're telling me is that repetition, repeated challenges that keep coming up again and again, patterns of behavior that we're not able to shift with these like initial interventions and like the normal collaborative approaches, that's when we might go, actually, we think we need you to go to someone who specializes in this. And I have actually sent clients before to professionals for mental health services when I don't think I can actually do anything more here. This is outside of my jurisdiction. And to have someone who specializes in that kind of area, specifically related to the dog stuff, is so useful, because people don't get it. And you're talking about this type of person who treats animals like moral agents and like they have rights and like they're family members, and that's actually a minority of like humanity. And so being able to find someone who just gets it immediately and who can then talk you through those things is so useful. And I love this focus that you have on just awareness, because that was my first big wake-up call, because I've had this similar experience where like raising my dog, my first dog Hero, who had lots of behavior challenges, was like this spiritual healing experience for me, like logical, whatever, all the different things, experience for me. And a big part of that was awareness, because he was like a mirror that reflected back at me everything
Totally.
I did, right? And at the beginning, I just blamed him for everything, not realizing that I was just looking in a mirror the whole time. And I was like, you suck. And I was just saying it
Same,
to
poor
myself.
Sully. He's like, I helped you develop this whole damn thing,
He
Marissa.
really
Thank
did.
you.
He's like, I've done so much work here, Krishma. Like, you can thank me later. Um, and I do every day, but it's amazing because I'm now 7 years into my journey with him. And so it feels like a long time ago, but we're seeing with our clients, they're just starting and they'll say things to me like, you know, it's actually really triggering for me because I'm having to realize what I'm doing. And I wasn't aware that I was doing that before. And now he's
Totally.
there
Yeah.
drawing attention to it. So this like idea of like being aware, this like consciousness, that seems to be like at the core of what you're doing for folks, is helping them like look at themselves and their behaviors and then process that
Yeah.
in relation to their dog, then in a wider way.
Yeah, and I think I will explain a little bit about my coaching approach because I think it's important because you did bring up mental health practitioners, right? And I think that there is, so I want to sort of define like what is the difference between coaching and therapy because I think it is really
Yes,
important.
let's do that.
And I've talked to, I have a mentor who's also a coach and a therapist. So she and I like have drawn the line really well together because I wanted to do this really ethically. That's really important to me. And so coaching really is about like what is here now. Like we're not going to go back in time and like sort of unravel like why you have this particular belief, when it came online, what were the conditions that created these beliefs. Like that's not my jurisdiction, right? Like a therapist is going to go back and unpack all of that for you. And sometimes that's really helpful and sometimes it's not necessarily needed. And so a coach is here to, okay, this is what we have in front of us right now. You have a limiting belief that you're not enough. Okay, let's take a look at that, right? And I'll share with you a little bit about like how we take a look at that. And so that is what coaching is. It's like, what is here now? And then how are we making a plan to move forward? Whereas therapy is, okay, what is here now? How did we get, let's unpack all of the past in order to understand what is here now.
Oh,
And
so interesting. So it's like therapy is like the excavation, and then coaching would be like scaffoldings for the future.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful analogy. And I think that sometimes, I have worked with people that have done therapy in the past and they come in with certain awareness. And I have worked with people that haven't done therapy and we just start with where they are and then we move forward. Um, the type of coaching that I do that is so interesting. I was actually trying to find it because I wanted to hold it up here. Back in the day, like this must have been like 2010 or something. I drew a photo of a dog, and in the photo of the dog, it was like barker, connector. Like I wound up writing all these different parts of what the dog is. And I was trying to sort of exemplify that, like, the dog isn't just reactive, the dog isn't just anxious, the dog is all of these different parts. And it's so funny, like, and not funny at the same time because the universe is so like winks at me like this. It's so funny that I fell into parts where coaching or like what folks may know as internal family systems, um, where you are made up of parts, right? Like it is believed that you have subpersonalities or different parts and they came online at a specific point in your life. Some of them came online because they wanted to protect or manage a certain situation or manage your emotional reaction the same way that my dog Sully was like, okay, hold on, I have a protector part, I have a reactive part, that because I'm feeling unsafe, okay, great, I'm going to engage in these particular behaviors, these particular ways of being to make sure that my environment feels safe, ward off any oncoming dog, my behavior is functional for me, I'm going to continue to use it. It is similar, if not the same, when we're looking at our parts. So like, for example, I have an organizer part and she's so kick-ass. Like she's who moved me across the country. She's who runs my whole business. She is the part of me that like gets shit done. And she also is the part that wants to organize others so that she doesn't feel dysregulated. She wants to organize her space or organize her calendar so to prevent feelings of overwhelm or lack of safety. And so instead of making her wrong or right, I have a deep relationship to all of my parts, and we have a deep dialogue. So I might say like, oh wow, I'm noticing, like, I'm just going to use a training example. I'm noticing you want to come in and organize this training plan or organize this training session. May I ask you, like, why do you feel unsafe right now? Right?
Yeah.
Just like meeting her where she is, the same way that I would say, like, oh wow, Peru, like she was just anxious because one of my um I have a friend visiting and he left and she was anxious and I was like, "Oh, Matt, like let me check in and see why are you feeling anxious right now?" Right? It's the same as like I meet my part with that level of compassion and go, "Hey, like what do you need right now? Like what is your need?" Instead of saying, "Here I go again, there I'm anxious," or that's another part that will come in, like my inner critic or my shamer. She might get dysregulated by my organizer and she might come in and shame the whole thing. And so then I meet her with compassion too, right?
Yeah.
So the coaching really helps to just piece apart all the different parts of us that are engaging in relationship that get activated by each other, but then also get activated by everything else externally.
Mm-hmm.
One being our dogs, right? So when you and I were talking, we were talking about how her anxious part freaking activates my
Really
anxious part. And
activated
then
you.
it's like, oh, fuck, we've got two
Mhm.
anxious beings
Yeah.
together. So it's really about nurturing and teaching those parts skills and validating their role. Like, wow, like you are so incredible that you organized my life. And
Yeah.
also, I don't need that particular coping strategy right now. Thank you so much.
Right. And it reminds me of like, I was on a hike with Hira this morning and he was getting a little bit overexcited for various reasons. And I was like, I love your enthusiasm. I'm here for your fun. You're not allowed to smash into your sister.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be, that's still not allowed. And it's like, I will
Mm-hmm.
accept you, I will honor you. Like, it's this process that you're going through with them of mapping out all of the different parts that kind of make up the conflicting motivations that often we see from our dogs. And that's what I love about parts. So I love parts work and like internal family systems. I've read the books and done lots of therapy myself. I'd never thought as obviously as this to apply it to the dogs, but it makes a lot of sense, because they are very similar to us, aren't they, in the way that they work, especially in their complexity and how much
Yeah.
they can contradict each other. And I think that's what lots of guardians find really confusing sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
about their behavior, is that they don't understand why in one moment the dog was
Totally.
defensive and snarling, the next moment they were sweet, and then the next moment they were scared. And this is such a useful lens to explain that for them, and then to apply to their dogs as well. So yeah, so interesting. And to flip it around, I used to, before I learned about internal family systems, I used to make jokes like, I have a border collie in my brain, and I also have a poodle in
Mm-hmm.
my brain, and I also have a shih
Mm-hmm.
tzu in my brain. So obviously my dog nerd head came up, intuited this in some way,
Totally.
but the way I understood it was like the different breed types in my head. So I love the idea that you have like a referee or a carer, and
Mm-hmm.
I would have been like a Saint Bernard and a border collie, and you know what I
I
mean.
love
So
that.
it's interesting, isn't it, how we can come to all these similar kind of concepts from these different
Mm-hmm.
angles, at the same time. But yeah, no, I love the idea of the parts work. And I'm trying to think about Hera's parts, my dogs. I want to, like, tell me, does Peru have her own little like parts as well? I'm intrigued. Some people are saying that they're really enjoying this conversation, which I love because it's not one I've heard.
Oh,
So
that's so
if you
great.
guys are thinking of any parts of your dogs, like, let me know in the
Yeah,
comments. I'd love to hear.
let us
Yeah.
know your parts. Somebody just wrote something about like, not jumping into like trusting your instincts and not jumping into into intervening the instant I see distress. Oh my gosh, that is so such a big task. And yeah, the part like that, my organizer would probably jump in and it like, because she's like, okay, let's organize this level of this is a lot of dysregulation, a lot of chaos. Let me organize it. And then it's having a conversation with her, like, are you able to trust? And sometimes she may be like, hell no. Like I remember when I was driving across the country here to California when I was moving here by myself, like she was so dysregulated the whole time. And I'm like, okay, I'll meet you where you are. That's it. Like you cannot trust right now versus maybe other times she can, right? So similar to our dogs, I cannot regulate my system in these conditions. However, in these conditions I can, right? Does Peru have parts? Yeah, she's got um she has an anxious, she tends towards it's mild anxiety, but she has an anxious part that needs so much like she's the first dog that I've really leaned into social comfort as a way to help support a dog. Like my last dog was not really interested in me, like that would be like a lot for him if I were like to kneel down or like apply touch or anything. Like she really responds to that, and it's bringing up like this concept that like some parts may need different soothing techniques, right? Or like some different beings may need different soothing techniques. And so she has a little bit of an anxious part, and she also has this really soft wiggly social part, like really extroverted just like me. Like I love that about that we share that, like we just love people and connection, and she just sort of wiggles in and is so like obvious about it. And then she's got this like gritty part that's like rolling dead seal, and like she's just like, I'm gonna get the
Like rock and
dirtiest I can
roll,
get. Yeah, totally. Like she's just so free. And so she's got like a lot of layers to her. And then she's got this like quiet observer part where she's 58% Pyrenees, right? So
oh
she's like
yeah.
very much very much just gathers information from this really like still place, and it actually helps me, like reminds me to sort of drop in and slow down too, and like take a deep breath with her.
Well,
Yeah,
that the site, the livestock guardian breeds have that kind of earthy, grounded
totally.
feeling to them, don't they? How interesting, actually, now thinking about this concept now and then thinking about it through the lens of mixed breeds and how mixed breed dogs might have how that might because that's often people say to me, like, if my dog is half beagle, half whatever,
Hmm.
how does that show up? And I'm like, well, it's not like split down the middle, it's like fractured, it's like a
Totally.
shattered middle. And they'll have different features of different breeds, and it can vary massively depending on the dog. And yes, I'm just curious, I'm thinking about that. I imagine as well, if you have these different first of all, it's worth saying as well, like this is actually a really different way of talking about behavior than I usually do on my platforms. If anyone's watching this and you're like, what the fuck, Krishma, this is also a valid way of talking about behavior, as much as antecedent behavior consequences and all of these kind of things that I talk about a lot on this channel. Like talking about how we conceptualize ourselves, our animals, how we like perceive of their internal system is just as valid. And I can hear some people being like, well, where are the studies to back this up? And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, just sit down, it's okay, just like let's just go with us
Yeah.
for a minute on
Yeah.
this, like you'll be
Yeah.
fine. I'm not saying that Peru is these things,
Yeah. Sure.
right? We're not saying she is
Sure.
this, we're saying we see this. These are things that are like helping us interact, they're part of the dynamic between the two
Yeah.
of us. So I just think that's worth mentioning, because I can already hear people with pitchforks being like science-based, and I'm like, we can be science-based and also lean into like the psychological sciences and philosophy and like all these other areas. So I'm excited to have you here to kind of help me have this conversation, because it's not one
Sure.
that I know how to have on in this way on this platform, although I talk about it all the time at home. So I imagine if we have these different parts that we're identifying or noticing, we probably show up differently, like you mentioned
Totally.
that a little bit, but we show up differently. So we might even have different training protocols based on like who's in the driver's seat with the dog at different times. That makes sense with me with Hira, because Hira is the exact example of this, like Jekyll and Hyde dog. Like he is simultaneously terrified, pissing himself, shitting himself. He has that absolutely panicked, terrified little baby part. And then he has this teenager who's like, "I'm gonna fucking get you." And he's got like a knife, and he's like, "Who's going on?" And then he also has this like sweet, soft, cuddly, like he's going to lay on my chest and eye gaze with me for like
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes. And
Mm-hmm.
if one person saw one of his parts, they probably wouldn't believe that he
Sure.
could be the other way. And people say it to me all the time. They're like, oh, I don't believe he could be aggressive. And I'm like, oh, you haven't met the knife wielding adolescent
Yeah.
maniac that exists within him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, how does that, you see that, like that kind of, you have to adjust how you are, or you have to even call a different part of yourself up maybe
Yeah.
when you're, how does that work? How would
Yeah.
you like, yeah, how would you explore that?
As you were saying that, it reminds me of like, I mean, how many times have you been in a behavior consult with a pet parent and they're listing out all the behavior concerns? And I mean, if I had a dollar for how many times pet parents would say this, but he's really lovely. Like you know, in these, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I so believe you. Like, I'm not making this all of the dog, right? Like this dog is, there's many, like his behavior is functional for him, or her behavioral is a functional for her. Like they've learned specific coping strategies that may not be working for either you or them, right? So
Yeah.
it just reminds me of that,
No,
right?
no, it
um
totally, absolutely does. And I think it's so smart because what you're actually doing in this part, like you just like unlocked a little thing in my head there when you said that. What you're actually doing with this is you're helping guardians who are struggling with, you know, why can't my dog be better? Why can't my dog be different? When will they be fixed? These kinds of like fundamental mindset challenges that actually get in the way of healing for the dog and also for you. And like to me, I would be like to myself when I was younger, why can't you just be less anxious? Why can't you just be
totally.
less overwhelmed? What's wrong with you? Like,
Totally.
why can't you just do this? And I tried to bully myself down into submission, and I did the same thing to him. He didn't fucking have it, bit me. And then I had to take a look in the poodle shaped mirror and change my behavior.
Yeah.
But I just
He's
love
like,
that.
that whole internal dialogue sucks. Can you not project
Literally,
that shit onto me, because it really sucks. Yeah.
he was
Like,
like, absolutely not. I will not stand for this.
and I love, like, Sully was only 25% purities, but he was so pure, and he was like the second I like, you know, came in with that energy, it was just like, yeah, get the fuck out of here. Like he was so like, absolutely not. Um, but going back to what you were saying, yes, we show up differently. Like it's so funny. I will have some of my, when I used to work with clients doing training and coaching, now I'm just doing coaching. So I'm just like you know, I send clients like, yes, you need a trainer, go see a trainer. Here are amazing virtual trainers. And then if you need some additional support, here's my service, right? And so when I was back in the day, when I would review training videos, I would ask my clients who was present for that training session. And they'd be like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, actually it was this part of me. And I'm like, yeah, like what do we see of what happened? And they're like, yeah, I was rushing, I wasn't deep breathing, I was projecting this, the dog opted out of the training session. Like we can take a look because we can see like who showed up to the training session and what was going on for you internally.
Right.
Like it reminds me of when I take my dog to agility. uh, I am doing a lot of self-management about who is training her. Is
Yeah.
it like, you know, is it the organizer, is it the shamer, is it my anxious one? Like who's there doing it?
Yeah.
Lots of times it's like it's what I call SF Marissa. Like that part is my San Francisco Marissa. She wants to have fun all the time. I used to live in San Francisco,
Uh-huh.
and she's so fun. She's just like, woo, like let's have a good time or whatever. And so normally it's her, and I'm like laughing and screwing up the cues, and you know, Peru is like running on the field. Like it's, and I'm like, okay, great. I would prefer to be training from this place because it's she's having fun, I'm having fun, until it tips to a place where she's a little bit confused, and then I might need to bring in another part to help like ground us, right? So it's I'm aware of what parts are showing up and why, especially as you know, if I'm in front of another trainer, and a lot of people in the class know I'm a trainer, so then like my shamer might be like, Marissa, you didn't practice enough
You're not
this
good enough.
week. And it's like
Yeah.
I know, I know, we like, actually you do have a point, we didn't practice enough this week, and we did practice this. Like, can you recognize that? Are you available to recognize that? And she might be like, no, right? And so I will have a dialogue so that they're not running the show, right? And I'm not doing this all the time because it's impossible, but I am aware enough that I'm like, oh, I don't want to bring this into our interaction, right? And so I'm just um, providing myself some awareness and some compassion, so that again, I'm not like, and I'm not using that like pushy voice to like make stuff happen, and it's like it's not coming from a grippy place.
What I'm hearing at this point is like, so we're kind of like identified what some of the challenges might be. We have these challenges that guardians might be experiencing, and then we have this method of investigation which you do within this coaching program. You have this kind of concept of parts work that leads the investigation, and the actual result that I'm hearing and what I've experienced myself is more fluent switching between different parts, more fluent communication, more fluent like functional use of the different parts. And I think what I see from what I feel internally when I think about hero's parts, and I think about that scared part, for example, that completely shuts down and panics. That's been a real problem, honestly, for us, because you can't reach him when he's like that. It's been a part that like upsets me a lot, because my carer feels like I can't help him.
Okay,
You know,
yeah,
it hurts. I failed. It hurts.
totally.
It hurts me, and like my voice, it hurts me inside to see him like that. And in my head, intuitively, I'm like, I don't want to like give that my attention. I don't want to give it compassion. I don't want to think about it. I want it to go away. Like, I don't want to think about that
Totally.
at all. But what actually happens is when you start to investigate and like get curious and observe the patterns, it becomes less intense. So it's like you're saying, I'm not letting them be in the driver's seat. I think you said something like that. I have a dialogue with them, but they're not in the driver's seat. And I think that lots of people don't have a dialogue with this, and that means that they are in the driver's seat. Like they have no control over what's happening. The same with the dogs, right? So it's this counterintuitive thing where if you move towards this uncomfortable thing it's just like the dogs. Like if you move towards this uncomfortable thing with curiosity, and you actually investigate this scary thing, it stops being so scary. And then we can actually function around it and access our other systems and other pieces and parts of ourselves around that thing. So that's so interesting. I think like that general idea seems to come up a lot in this work. That idea of like letting go and observing, and let go and observe.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. Like, I think a lot of times the parts are unconscious, like they're unconsciously in the driver's seat. And it's like, of course they are, because they're trying to keep us safe, right? And so much love and respect for those parts. And there comes a time where like you may, as an individual, go like, I don't know if that's how like, I'd like to actually step in and drive the bus. I don't know if that part needs to always be driving the bus, right? And we offer those parts like I do a lot of visualization, and we offer those parts like a shit ton of compassion and gratitude, because they, even though they may be not functional anymore or not desirable anymore or like getting in your way, they have been a coping strategy for you. And again, as a coach, I'm not going back in time to understand when it came online and why you developed that coping strategy. That's not my role as a coach. It is more, okay, it's here now, and now what do we want to co-create? And we can have dialogue with these parts to really just build a healthier relationship between them, when and if they're ready, right? Like it's all, and it just I bring in a lot of parallel to our behavior modification process, because it's like, I'm not like, we're having conversations with our dogs all the time in the behavior modification process. Like, I'm not moving you closer to the scary thing, or I'm not asking you to stay home alone longer than you can if you can't, right? So I'm just having this really nuanced, sophisticated, hopefully, and compassionate dialogue with your nervous system, and going like, how are you right now? Can you? What can you do? Okay, you can't. It's the same thing. Like, I always joke that some of our clients, or my clients that like are really gravitated to this work, they're already having this dialogue with their dogs in like such a beautiful way. It's just now generalizing those skills to themselves. And usually there are parts that are like, this, no, this is not safe. And so we have to talk to them. We have to like ask them, you know, what their role is, get really curious, really get to meet them. And
Mm.
sometimes they've not been met, right? And so um, yeah, I do a lot of parallel to the dog's learning process, because a lot of these people or a lot of my clients are already so aware of that, and like making the generalization helps it to really land for them. And that's also what I'm trained in, right? Like I'm trained in this coaching modality, and I'm certified behavior consultant, right? So
Yeah.
I'm weaving all of what I know into my coaching practice.
It's truly like a multimodal interdisciplinary practice, which I think is what this industry needs and what the guardians need. And I'm just listening to you talk and I'm thinking like, I'm so glad now that you're doing this coaching full time, because I have somewhere to send people when they're struggling,
Oh,
because
thank you.
we can do so much, you know, we can do a lot, but it's not, like I said, that's not my area. Like I have a personal interest in healing modalities for humans, right? I've done internal family systems work myself. I have not really ever applied any of that to my clients. That's not what my job is. I can provide behavior consulting skills and I can help you in coaching to and make sure it's enacted effectively. But if we're seeing these consistent challenges that are repetitive, that are coming from like a deeper place, that's where we can be like, go to Marissa, because so frequently with the dogs that I'm seeing, we see with like really challenging dogs at CCA, we see the dogs who have like all the behavior, we still call it behavior bingo. You know, they have the reactivity, stranger issues, dog issues, separation anxiety, grooming stuff. They've got medical stuff going on. And I have one of those dogs myself. And I can tell you the thing that impacted my success the most was this whole problem. My mindset, the way I was
Yeah.
perceiving him, the way I was conceptualizing him, and the way I was conceptualizing myself and perceiving myself, because
Mm-hmm.
that affected every single thing within our behavior plan. It's like at the mouth of the river, right? Like everything flows downstream from there. And I ended up doing this work myself, reading 10,000 books, you know, about psychology and healing and all the podcast, you know what we're like, us nerds, you know, we'll figure it out. But I'm just so excited because this work is like really important, really hard sometimes as well for
Mm-hmm.
people, and I'm so glad that they have someone like you to like steward them through it, because yeah, I'm a double Scorpio. You don't want me talking to you about your feelings, you know, and paying me for that, and like talking to you about like the next that's not my area. Everyone has their role, right? And your role seems to be really well placed here. We've got a few folks in the comments who are just saying how much they enjoyed our podcast episode. So if anyone hasn't listened to Marissa's podcast, it's the Pause and Reward podcast. You can find it like anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
And we did a recent episode about separation anxiety and the toll that it can take on the
Yeah.
guardian. So do go check it out if you haven't already. And Marissa, where can people find you to work with you if they're interested in learning more, if they're interested in, yeah, tell us a little bit more. There's a podcast, but fill us in.
Yeah. It's pauseandreward.com. So I specialize so I do a lot of shelter consulting, which is just like the other piece of my heart. So I work a lot with shelters, and then the other piece of my heart is this coaching program. And so it's on pauseandreward.com. There's a tab for coaching. You can check that out there. You can check out my podcast. My book is there as well. And yeah, I'm on Instagram.
I have to get your book. So how did I miss that? I'll be checking that out. And
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
Marissa's podcast is so good. So please go check it out. And I don't know, do you think there's anything we're missing? Any final thoughts? Anything we want to add in the last few minutes?
No, I
What are you thinking?
appreciate you talking about this. And it's I'm so grateful that I'm able to finally step into this, because again, there's been this like, where does this all fit? Right. And so I just appreciate the people that have joined us for the live to hear about this. And yeah, I'm really excited to be stepping into doing this more full time, and leaving the great consulting up to my amazing colleagues,
Yeah.
right, that are doing amazing dog training and behavior modification work.
You know, I'm so excited. I have a personal interest in the way this industry is going to be created over the next 10 to 20 years, the way that it's kind of building and developing. And I see folks like you out there like just leading the charge in innovating and like seeing the gaps in the industry, in which there are many gaps. Oh my god, you absolute babes in the comments putting Marissa's website down there. You guys are
Oh
rock
my gosh,
stars. We love you guys. Thank you.
that's one of my clients.
Thank
Hi,
you. You're so
Kelly.
sweet. Aren't they the best? I love these guys. They're
The
honestly
best.
so chill. They're
The
like the best
best.
people. I knew
Kelly
you guys would
actually
love
helped me
Marissa.
like shepherd this into
Oh,
reality. And
amazing.
so
Well,
thank you,
that, thank
Kelly.
you. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, thank you, Marissa, for just like leading the way. And I'm excited to hopefully see lots of other folks joining you in this important piece of the puzzle. And if anyone needs to reach out to Marissa, you know where to find her.
Awesome.
And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Marissa, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Krishma. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
It was a pleasure. All right. Bye, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.